Well, turning now to an update, schools across East Texas are back online tonight after a cyber attack compromised student information and locked those schools out of their online learning platform. As KLTV 7's Emma Burns reports, the cyber attacking couldn't have come at a worse time for some.
A cyber attack on Canvas used by thousands of schools locked students and teachers out as finals neared, forcing some classes to pause online learning. Now, the platform is back online. Many school systems across East Texas were impacted, including Tyler ISD and the University of Texas at Tyler, after users reported they could not access courses and saw a scheduled maintenance notice instead.
I am quite concerned about the Canvas security breach, especially given how little I know about the extent of what was leaked and how it might impact students across the country.
UT Tyler student Ben Boyd says his finals weren't disrupted, but he's worried about what student information could be in the wrong hands. In a statement from UT Tyler, the campus shares they have not yet received confirmation about the amount of information that was exposed and that Instructure, the company that owns Campus, is investigating. Instructure says the hackers accessed student names, emails, ID numbers, and messages, but not their passwords, birthdays, or financial information.
Students' information can be so easily accessed by people seeking to do harm with it, I guess, and that this needs to start a very serious discussion about the amounts of information that platforms like Canvas have and the fact that they are seemingly unable to protect it.
Instructure says that Canvas is safe to use and that the threat no longer has access to the platform. Emma Burns, KLTV 7 News.
Canvas says users should be cautious of unexpected emails or messages about the incident. Avoid clicking suspicious links and report anything unusual to your school or institution's IT team.